All right, we may as well get started. Hope everyone's having a decent day today. I'll just go over some brief administrative stuff to cover, and I'll open up for questions right after that. So I wanted to talk briefly, and I've announced this already, but the midterm was really well done. The people that wrote it averaged 87%. We unfortunately had a bunch of people that did not write it for whatever reason, and that lowered the class average down to 76% if I consider everyone in the class. What I saw was really very, very well done multiple choice and good short answers, though my recommendation has always been to use point form. Some people did that very, very effectively. I saw some people that wrote long paragraphs, and that's fine if that's the better way to express yourself. But if you're wasting the time on the exam to sort of reiterate the question and then put your responses and then do a concluding sentence or two, that's probably wasting more time than a 5-mark or a 10-mark question is worth. So don't be shy about using point form on the final exam when we get there. The other minor note is that it was best 6 out of 7 questions for the short answer, and probably a third of the class answered all 7. So that's not a problem. I'll mark the first 6. The only problem is if it's taking time away from, say, finishing the multiple choice in order to do so. So please do take the time to read the instructions. It's worth taking that 10, 15 seconds so that you don't do more work or misappropriate your resources to answer questions that you're not going to get credit for ultimately. So that's all I had on the midterm for now. Term papers are a couple weeks, 2 weeks and 1 day away, I believe at this point. About 3/4 of the class has chosen a topic at this point. So if you are one of the people that has not yet chosen a topic, I would suggest you move on that very, very quickly. The time is growing really short to do a good term paper. The instructions for how to choose a topic were given in the announcements early on. If you look at term paper, I believe there's probably a series of announcements on term paper. If you look at term paper 1, it will cover what you need to know. So look back through those announcements. And then the last comment that I have is this is Chapter 7, the week of Chapter 7. So very, very standard week for us, much like most other weeks. We've got a quiz at the end of it due Friday at 11:59 p.m. So read the chapter, understand it, and do the quizzes. There are a couple people out there still floating around that have not bothered to successfully complete the prerequisites, being the academic integrity module proof and the course requirements quiz, in order to see those quizzes. So they're losing potential marks at the rate of 1.5% per chapter. So it's 9% now that people have missed if they haven't submitted that. And if they get to the end of this week, it'll be another 1.5%. So that's my advice, is to get that stuff done. It's late, but it's at least you can get some marks for the quizzes. And beyond getting marks for the quizzes, it helps prepare you for the final exam, just like the quizzes would have helped you prepare for the midterm. Okay, so that's really all I've got in administrative type news. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever?
Yeah, I had a question. So my question was, how can I see my midterm, like the multiple choice or the short answer, or like, will you give any feedback on it, or?
Yeah, I don't release those. I can, if you wish to send me an email, I can give you a split on your performance between the short answer and the multiple choice. The multiple choice was worth 2/3, 60 marks, and the short answer was worth 30. So I'm happy to give you that split, but I'm not prepared to release specifics.
So 5 each for the short answer. How much did you say the multiple choice was per person?
There were 60 questions at a mark each, so 60 marks.
Okay.
But I'm happy
then
if
in
you
the
send me
thing
an
it said
email.
30.
I'm sorry?
When you like when the mark comes in the grading section, it says it's out of 30, but then
I
it's
fixed that.
25%. Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I fixed that yesterday. Another student let me know. So I did have a legacy out of 30 there. It is out of 25, just like the title in the grade center says. So hopefully it says that. If it doesn't, can you just shoot me an email on that as well, please?
I'll check right now. You can answer.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I'm quite sure that I fixed it last night, but perhaps not. Always a possibility that I didn't. I'm just looking right now as well while you're doing that. Yeah, it shows us out of 25 for me. I don't get to see, like you're looking probably at your my grades. I'm looking at the setup of it. So it's a different view. I'm looking at it a different way. But those marks that are published are out of 25. I can assure you of that.
Yes, you're right. It's out of 25.
It shows that now.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. I had in previous iterations of the course, I had the midterm as 30%. I decided to make it worth a little less this time around. So that's where that came from. I have a written question from a student saying, if I do poorly on the exam, but well on everything else, will I pass the class? So the final is worth 35%, I believe. Let me just check my syllabus here. So yeah, the final exam is worth 35%. So I'm not sure, like if you've done well, if you've got an 80% mark for 65% of the class, I'm just doing the math here, times 65, that gives you 52 marks. And if you get 40%, as the example said, on the final exam, then you'd end up with a 66. Now that's not, like that's assuming that you got an 80% on all the marks, excluding the final exam, so including the midterm exam. So it's just straight math. It's just straight math to do to figure out what you need. The cumulative marks that are in your grade center are the actual percentage marks. So that's why that's why the quizzes are out of 1.5 and the midterms out of 25. So that's where you stand. If you stop doing any work at all right now, that would be your final mark, what you see there. So the follow-up question is, so do I have to pass the final exam to pass the class? The answer is no, you do not. There's no separate requirement in this course to pass the final exam. You just have to have a passing mark, and when I add up all the marks. Now, your individual programs may require you to have a 60 or 65 in the course. I don't know that. That's beyond me. But the course itself, to get a credit for the course, you need to have 50%. You're welcome.
I did read your email about the online when the person is seeing you, but how does it work? Like the audio and the face, like the camera thing. So could you explain a little more on that? Because I've never done it before. So
fair enough. That we have that in common. I've never done it either. I have no idea whatsoever. Sorry. This is my understanding is it's a service that the university contracts out. So we have a vendor, we have a service provider that does it. I would ask if you ask that question to it@trentu.ca, you could probably get an answer that way. Yeah, I have no experience, unfortunately.
So I register first and then I ask them.
Well, you could, I mean, I don't think you have to register first necessarily. I would reach out to IT and they may give you some sort of information or detail. The name of the company that we use is called Examnity. I believe it's EXAMNITY, but there might not be an N there. Give me 1 second, I'll check that too.
Isn't it by
Sorry,
SES or something like that?
It's Examity. So EXAMITY. So I've just Googled that. If you go there, there's probably lots of description as to how it works.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Good. All right. Any other questions? So just to circle around on that, there's a deadline for denoting where you're going to write your exam, whether you're going to do it online or at Durham or at Peterborough. And the default in the past, at least, has always been Peterborough. So if you don't say anything, you'll be expected to show up in Peterborough and write your exam. So do pay attention to that. There was an announcement that's in our announcement section by the IT group at Trent, and that will tell you when you need to have that information in. Again, just referring to that. That was posted on Tuesday, November 2nd, and it walks you through how to choose where your location is. And so you were supposed to have that, or you are supposed to have that done by the 12th at the latest. So that's Friday. So please do denote where you want to take your exam by Friday by following the information in the announcements section. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or concerns? Well, I'm certainly pleased to see a little better attendance this time, and it's tough with an online course. And quite honestly, I've delivered this course in person and in online, and I've done it in an online environment where I just provided information. I didn't interact with students, and it was up to students to reach out to me if they had questions. And so that leaves the entire learning experience in their own hands in terms of managing it. But when we take an hour or up to an hour each week and students aren't taking advantage of that, it just feels like a waste of time at that point. But hopefully you guys and anyone that watches this video afterwards are getting some value out of this, because this is the kind of thing that in a live lecture, I would always start off with 5 or 10 minutes of administration and just make sure everyone understood what the expectations were, what was needed that week, what was needed in the future weeks, how things in the past had gone, just the sort of things that I cover here, and answer questions for people. So.
I had a question. So our exams December 16, right, at 7 p.m. Just confirming.
I don't actually know that. I haven't checked the schedule.
Okay, can you please check? I just
Sure,
want to
absolutely.
confirm.
Give me
So
one.
then I can plan my other.
Yep, absolutely. Give me 1 second to do exactly that.
I mean, if I go to my Trent, that's what it says for me. I just want to confirm.
Yep, well, that's likely to be right, but let me just check that. Exam schedule, okay. So I show, like you said, Thursday, December 16th starting at 7 p.m. with a 3-hour duration.
Sorry, 7 p.m. Yeah.
Yeah, 7 p.m.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's what I've got. Now, speaking to anyone that has accommodations around the time of day for the exam, that is not a problem at all. Work with your academic advisor and the academic advisor related to your accommodation, and they will help you to schedule it, whether you need a different environment, whether you need a different time, all those sorts of things. If you are writing online, the time will be automatically adjusted for you. If you're writing in person and you need that extra time, you will talk to the SAS people, and they will arrange for you to write it. You won't write it in the midst of the class and just go longer. It'll be done in a separate location. So I'm happy to help anyone out with that, and I certainly support any accommodation that anyone needs in terms of writing the final exam. That also applies, by the way. Some people may have accommodations related to extra time for the assignment. Please ask for that up front or earlier on, as opposed to after the thing is due. But I'll always follow whatever SAS does recommend for an individual. So no worries that way at all. Any other questions?
Hi, Professor. I do have a question about the midterm
Yes.
grade.
Yes.
I noticed that there was a change to the Blackboard. I wasn't sure if that was intentional or not, because it's reporting out of 25 now.
It is out of 25. That was intentional. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I messed up. I had it from an old version of the course. We roll the courses forward and make changes each year, but you do it based on the template from the previous year typically. And my previous year was out of 30, not out of 25, and I just missed it.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Yeah. So the mark that I had put up was always out of 25. It just showed incorrectly as being out of 30. So there were people that got perfect. They would have shown as 25 out of 30, but in fact got 25 out of 25.
All right. All right.
Yep. The marks are generally very good, very strong in this course. And that's typical. I'm used to that. If people don't put the required amount of it, where students typically fall down or have the most challenge is on the term paper. So when you consider that the term paper is worth as much as the midterm exam at 25%, you probably want to put a fair bit of effort into it in order to keep that really high average that a lot of people are cruising through with. I expect the quizzes to be done very, very, very well. And I expect the midterm to go very well. It'll be interesting to see. It's been a couple of years since we've had an in-person exam in this course. So we'll see how that goes. But what you saw in the midterm is going to be very, very similar to the format of the final exam, except that you'll have a cheat sheet and not full access to your textbook. And it'll be a little longer. So it'll be a 3-hour final instead of a 2-hour midterm.
Do you mind explaining a little more about the whole cheat sheet aspect you just mentioned? Because I was going to lead into that. Like,
Sure.
we had an open book midterm.
Mm-hmm.
So are we expected to have a book for the final, or how would that work out?
No, we're going to do a cheat sheet. So you'll have an 8.5 by 11, so a standard size. And that's in imperial measurements. I have no idea what that is in centimeters. 8.5 by 11 standard sheet of paper, both sides. You can print on it with a printer as small as you want. You can write on it. You can do whatever you want, but you'll only be able to take that one piece of paper in with you.
Double-sided or just the single
Double-sided.
page?
Double-sided.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it's printing paper size. Your standard, what they would call letter size paper. We've got a few weeks ahead of us before we have to worry about that. But that it is, it's important to note that that final is going to cover chapters 1 through 10, so the entire course. But you can rest assured that it will emphasize the second half of the course, right? I've already awarded up to 25% for the first half of the course. So there's some concepts that flow through the entire year, like the entire semester. But I would focus more on the second half of the course, though I would want to study everything when we get there. And we'll have an office hours before the final talking about that. It's usually the last office hours of the term, which I can tell you when that is. Which looks like Monday, December the 6th. So we'll talk about the final in depth at that point, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks away yet when we'll talk about it. So we're about 6 weeks away from the final, 5.5, 6 weeks away from the final at this point. The bigger concern is, of course, the term paper that's due in a couple weeks in 1 day. So.
Can we have the cheat sheet as digital or?
As digital in that it's been printed digital?
Yeah, in Word document and
No, not in a Word document. It has to be a piece of paper. I don't have any way of controlling that. That just enters a whole level of extra, oversight that would have to be done, because then you'd be able to have a Word document open. How big is that Word document? Is there another Word document open? That kind of stuff. So it has to be printed. I think you'll see if you're writing online with the Proctored Online, they will have you show them that Word document. I think they probably have you pan the camera around. Don't quote me on that. That's just my understanding of how that works. But I believe you end up sharing your desktop with them, so you won't be able to have anything open except for your browser to complete the exam. So yeah, Tuesday, November 23rd is when the written assignments due. I did want to take a second to emphasize, and I'll come back to this next week again. The submission format is in Word document form. So you can do it in whatever you want, but I need it in Word format when it is submitted online. So you're going to submit it through Blackboard. It's like a Dropbox type mechanism that's in the assessments. Sorry, it's in the assignment section. You'll drop it in there for me, but it has to be in Word format. I might not find out if you've submitted in, for instance, in PDF format. I might not find out for a week. Like, I'm not going to look at every one to make sure that instructions have been followed. So you would take a penalty when I ask you to resubmit it, and I wouldn't give you a lot of time to do that. So save yourself and me the hassle and submit it in Word format. Go to the syllabus and understand exactly what the requirements are. It's clearly outlined what I'm looking for in the written assignment section in terms of submitting it in Word format. It's also, hopefully no one's planning to be late. Assignments later than 7 days will not be accepted. That will be it. It also says assignments in formats other than Word will not be accepted and will be assessed a 10% penalty plus late penalties on resubmission after the due date. So you can quickly get yourself in a big penalty situation by not submitting it in the correct format. I don't have a way in Blackboard that I'm aware of anyways, to limit the submissions to Word format. It would accept a PDF or something like that as a system, but I need it in Word format. Okay. Well, I don't have anything else to share with you guys. It's been almost half an hour here. If you're good, feel free to drop off. If you want to stick around and ask me a question when there's less people here, I won't include the individual questions if they're personal questions in the recording. So have a good evening, and I'll hang around for a few minutes until everyone's dropped or nothing's happened for a few minutes.
I actually do have another question for you.
Sure, go ahead.
In regards to the paper, I'm looking at the rubric you put up on the video you sent,
Yeah.
and I noticed that for the rubric you are looking for, well, a demonstration of excellent quality of content within the main body.
Yep.
So in regards to that, are you expecting, or would you be looking for us to drag elements from the content of this course within the paper, sort of linking the two, like proactively, or is it just our own research through the internet? And if a topic arises that correlates to the textbook, we can implement that.
That's a great question. So I am not looking for any linkage to the course whatsoever. The topics are standalone. I've tried to make them sort of extracurricular to the course, but interesting and along the same, in the same sort of general area as the course. But there's no need, first of all, to use the textbook. There's no need to relate it back to any of the concepts in the course. It's a standalone paper. You could not have taken the course and write this paper and you'd be fine.
All right.
That help? Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Can we cite the textbook? Yes, you certainly can. Yeah, absolutely. I think most of the topics aren't really directly out of the textbook. You're certainly welcome to cite the textbook. My first place for material would be Google Scholar, and go from there. I wouldn't be afraid. Don't cite things like Wikipedia, but do look up the topic if applicable in Wikipedia and see the sources that they use to cite and use that as part of your research. So that's always the good use for Wikipedia for higher level academic papers, to look at some of their sources. Once you find something in Google Scholar, preferably a peer-reviewed article of some sort, they will cite a whole bunch of articles. It's like you'll get a flow down of other articles to read that will help you in your own research.
Could you explain why the 10 citations for the references and the in-text citations?
Sure. So I'll explain it in a couple of ways. So some students, and there is a video to take a look at this. Some students seem to confuse the concept of citations and references. So references are the complete listing of the book or the article, including the author and the publication date, that are listed at the end of the paper. Citations are the little notation within your text that refer to that concept. So I've often had, and this happens in every single course that I teach that I require writing for, I have students that give me a list of references, but they don't cite the references. So I'm left guessing which sentence, which part, where they got their information. So you need to have both. You need to have citations and references, but the requirement is for 10 different references. You might have 20 citations in there because you might cite each reference a couple times throughout. I'm not saying you have to, I'm saying you might. So what I'm trying to do by requiring this is get to a higher level of writing, a much more academic level of writing. I used to do papers and specifically discussion boards without requiring citations and references. And what I got was a bunch of claims and unsubstantiated statements that may work really well on Facebook. They may work well on LinkedIn or whatever, or any social media or with your friends or whatever, but it's not at an academic level. I want you to make a statement and prove to me where that statement came from, so that you'll do your research, you'll have a series of statements, and you'll come to your own conclusion based on these statements that have validity because they are cited from references somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I make it the level of 10 is because even though it's only 1,200 to 1,500 words, again, if you make it 3, you get this high level of sort of speculation or unsubstantiated information, and I want you to substantiate what you're saying to me, so that I can have. I obviously don't know everything, and no one knows everything, but when I read a sentence and it says something that I don't believe to be true or isn't in my experience true, I love seeing that citation at the end so I can go and read where you got that. Did you misinterpret it? Did you find something that I don't know? Is there something, is there something to be learned there for me? And that's fantastic, because our opinions aren't necessarily going to be the same, and we can come to different opinions based on the same facts, but let's at least agree on the facts. Let's get our basis together, and then propose, our interpretation of those facts. So by requiring a high level of citations and references, we get a good solid base of fact to work with, or at least that's the intention.
So the in-text citations are not counted in the word limit that you set up. They don't count, right?
I'm not that strict about it, to be honest. I'm not. If your submission was 1,180 words, so 20 words short of my minimum, my quote minimum, as long as you've got lots of content, I'm happy with that. If it was 1,580 words, again, I don't care that much. What I don't want is 500 words, no matter how good you are. And I don't want 3,000 words, because that's just way beyond the scope of what I'm looking for. So whether I count them or not is kind of irrelevant. And typically I would count them in the word count, just because I wouldn't exclude them. I wouldn't go to the trouble of excluding them. I'd just highlight the whole body of the actual essay itself and see what that word count was. And I don't even do that unless it's substantially short or substantially long.
Got it.
Okay. So I do see a message on a relatively personal matter with one of the students here. I will say that I don't do any makeup on missed exams, missed assignments, missed quizzes, missed anything. It's entirely up to the student, unless there's, for instance, a medical emergency or something like that is provable. This is university, and I guess some professors would have a different opinion or a different approach. My approach is that we're all adults here. If you don't do your work, I'm not giving you extra work to do over. That's high school stuff as far as I'm concerned. So if you've missed the midterm, you've missed the midterm, and that's it. Now, I understand there's a certain person here that probably wants to discuss that a little further with me. We can either wait till everyone else leaves, or we can set up a separate time to have a discussion. But the bottom line is I'm not offering makeup work to people that miss the midterm. And maybe to expand a little bit on that, the one thing I can be is fair. And by fair, I do the same thing for every single student. If someone has a accommodation through the university that's outside of the sort of comparative, as far as I'm concerned, because someone has assessed that person's needs, that student's needs, and we do offer that kind of accommodation based on some sort of existing situation. But if I let someone write a quiz that's been closed, if I let someone hand in a paper that's 10 days late and I don't let someone else do it, then I'm not being fair to someone. If the more verbal person is speaking up, or the more outspoken person is speaking up and saying, I'd like to do this and I'd like to do that, I don't know what's going on with the people that don't speak up to me. So I simply do the same thing for everyone so that I can never be accused of being unfair. You may not agree with my decision, but it'll be applied across the entire classroom. So that I do guarantee. Does anyone have any further questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, have a good week. Thanks for showing up again.